I feel like some of those lower level, like identity and access management and title management tools, data governance, and just governance in general, I feel like almost a lost art, and now it's coming back. And I think that was, the big misunderstanding that, hey, this is completely different. And in a lot of ways it is different, but it's also the same.
Welcome to Speed Data, quick conversations with cybersecurity leaders. I'm your host, Megan Garza. Today, I have a special guest, VP and Distinguished Engineer at Query and AWS Savant, Jonathan Rao. Welcome to the show, Jonathan.
Hey, Megan. Good morning. It's great to be here.
Jonathan's expertise in data security and protection has earned him a spot as a top cybersecurity voice on LinkedIn. A former board advisor, CISO, and 4-year Army veteran, Jonathan has honed his skills at Cisco, NBC, Nationwide, and Blue Cross Blue Shield. His time at Amazon Web Services helped him author Electric Eye, a multi-cloud, multi-SaaS Python CLI tool that continuously monitors AWS services for misconfiguration that may be degrading the CIA triad. When Jonathan is not garnering hundreds of comments and reshares on social media, the AWS Community Builder volunteers with AMVET, a nonprofit that supports American veterans. Jonathan, you have quite the background. I don't know what to dive into first.
Thank you, Megan. You certainly introduced me better than I introduce myself most times. Yeah, right now working at Query, VP Distinguished Engineer. I'm kind of in between both worlds of product and R&D, helping to develop and hone our federated search capabilities. Electric Eye has grown a lot as well since I first wrote it at AWS. Not only does it support AWS, it now has Oracle Cloud, Google Cloud. I'm working on a PR for Azure, which is slowly draining the life out of me. And then it also supports ServiceNow and Salesforce as well, with a couple different integrated reporting tools, such as an integration into the Amazon Data Lake. And I don't know, I feel like all the roads kind of led here just to being at the precipice of security and data, both data security and using data. And I think you guys do a little bit of data security in AWS as well.
And now you inadvertently coined the popular term Sec Data Ops while trash talking on social media. Tell me about that.
So Sec Data Ops, I meant it more as a joke, poking fun at DevSecOps or Sec DevOps, depending on what mode you want to talk about it in, even though it all means the same. I think DevSecOps was a great aspiration to try to reach, to bring developers closer to the fold of security, to push security requirements and security capabilities down to the development environments, and for both teams to have a shared responsibility of actually operating the tools. I've tried to implement it at a bunch of different places. I've watched it being implemented at a couple other places. And while there are success stories, there are a lot more failures and a lot more kind of annoyances and niggles about actually implementing it in places. So Sec Data Ops was more as kind of the sun was setting, as you would, on DevSecOps, where it got almost overly prescriptive, or there's too many tools, too many opinions. And I was like, well, why mess with the developers when we could actually make security people into data people? And that's really how it turned out. I don't know, marketing held me down and forced me to write a book when I was at Lightspin before we got acquired by Cisco on it. And at a high level, it's about security teams using data to achieve security outcomes, taking ownership of the data, both getting those hard data skills, like, how do I actually do exploratory data analytics? How do I do extraction, transformation, and loading, or ETL, and how do I move this data? But to really ask themselves, why am I collecting all this stuff? Does it actually help my operators do their job more effectively? Does it have decisioning support? And if it doesn't, let's tear all that stuff out, move to more modern data platforms, and just incrementally get better at what we do. We already have the domain expertise as security operators, and it kind of taken off from there. There's other companies that have coined the term. They use it within their marketing. We use it here at Query. This is a reinforced shirt. It's a Sec Data Ops on the background. I'm very sorry about that.
I love that. How did you get started in cloud security?
A little bit by accident. In the Army, I was on a bomb squad, and then I moved to doing radio telecommunications and a little bit of intel work. And when I got out, I was like, what do I do now? Like, I could probably be a good bank robber. I know how to use the radio explosives And, talking to folks that had already transitioned out before me, they're like, why not look into project management? You already have kind of the soft skills, the leadership skills. And it just so happened that some of my early contract PM work that I did when I was living in Columbus, Ohio, were for security teams. One of them was at Nationwide when maybe Venafi or something had happened with the way that Google was issuing certificates, and they either compromised a bunch of them or they expired a bunch of them. And that was the first project that I worked on at Nationwide, like right before the holiday freeze, the dreaded holiday freeze at the enterprises, that we had to roll this stuff out. And, I didn't know really much about security other than just like tiny little concepts and kind of getting my feet wet as a PM, seeing top down. But I would always ask, like, why are we doing this? Why does this take so long? And I'm sure they're annoyed at me because not only was I a PM, I was a contractor PM. So it's kind of like being a second class citizen at some places. But worked up that way, kind of by osmosis, learning, doing stuff on my own, hands on. I never, went to like a certificate program. I didn't go to college. I didn't go to a boot camp for this. I just kind of picked it up as I went, and then eventually ended up at AWS after NBC Universal, and became somewhat of a security specialist as a technical account manager. Just kept going from there. So yeah, it's been every place I go, I try to learn something new. I'm a constant student. I don't know everything. There's too much to know in security, let alone in the data engineering and big data and analytics world. So I feel like I'm still getting started in cloud security in a lot of ways.
Now, you were a CISO at an early stage cloud startup. Tell us about that.
It's a lot of sleepless nights. Being a CISO, in a word, is pretty stressful, right? My strengths obviously lie in cloud security and a tiny bit of security operations and offensive security. But now I'm owning privacy engineering, I'm owning governance, I'm owning risk management, both at the regulatory and kind of the corporate level, continuous compliance, and a bunch of other facets of it. So I had to quickly come up to speed. They were using Microsoft M365. I'd never managed an M365 environment. It was all Linux up to that point. So there's a lot of learning on the job, a lot of sleepless nights, a lot of locking people out of the computers, locking people out of the offices, resetting passwords. But we got it done. I learned a ton there. It was super stressful, but I got to contribute a lot to the product as well because I was an SME for Graphs. And, we had a successful exit to Cisco, and I guess you could consider that a win overall.
Absolutely. And speaking of cloud security, from your perspective, what are the biggest differences between data security in the cloud, such as AWS, Azure, GCP, versus on-prem?
The easy answer would be it could be anywhere, but I feel like on-prem, it could be anywhere. At IHS Markit, we had a couple business units or divisions, really. We had 900 something apps. I think there's something like 37,000 associates. But, we had used Varonis, and we'd used a couple other, data security tools, as well as like physical encryption elements. And I feel like the data was everywhere there too, except to put it in like a colo or to put it in a data center in the middle of Belgium or in the middle of New Jersey was a little bit harder to get the data there. So at least there is some governance and provenance with it. But in the cloud, there's a lot less, right? Like there's a lot of great, strong cloud security programs that have a ton of that provenance and governance before data gets moved. But when you have a bunch of different public cloud providers, you have a bunch of different SaaS providers, and then I guess PaaS is coming back, right? Like think something like a Databricks, a Snowflake, which I guess would be like a platform where you could put it on any of the three major clouds, but then it's its own thing, right? It's a data warehouse. It's a data platform. There's so many different gates that it's hard to capture it all. And that's the biggest thing. It's just the sprawl, the different shapes it could be in. Now we're past the days of, SANs and vSANs and NAS and like flash arrays, right? Using pure storage. And now that data could be in any shape, in any form. It could be structured, semi-structured, unstructured. It could be stored in an email service, in a data warehouse, in a data lake. It could be on the disks on a virtual machine. And any of it could be sensitive. Any of it could be maybe not sensitive in a PII perspective, which a lot of tools look for, but also just from like a business criticality perspective. Maybe, you're using a CRM tool or an ERP tool, and maybe they back the data up to just an EC2 instance somewhere, and then it gets popped, right? Like a bunch of this stuff happens. And that's really the big deal with, data security on the cloud, is that the governance perspective becomes even more critical to avoid moving the data unnecessarily, because we're really good at classifying and seeing, kind of the danger of data itself, but getting at it where it is in its native format, that's the part that's hard.
And what do you think most organizations misunderstand about cloud security?
Cloud security, I think, in a way, when it started, when there's actually like formal cloud security teams, and there still are. I think that a lot of them consolidated. Was that it was something completely different. It's all API driven. We could rely on the cloud provider, right? And this is the part where I would quote the shared responsibility model. But really, it's just an extension of what we've always done. And I feel like some of those lower level, like identity and access management and title management tools, data governance, and just governance in general, technology risk management, change requests, network security. I feel like almost a lost art, and now it's coming back. And I think that was, the big misunderstanding that, hey, this is completely different. And in a lot of ways it is different, but it's also the same. So it's not just the same responsibilities and roles that we had to fill. Now we have the extra stuff because the way that you stand up a service, I could build a whole AI service, a whole ML service. I could build a BI tool pretty much with 3 clicks of a button. And there's an inherent danger to that, and trying to stay ahead of it without being the department and no. I feel like on-prem security teams it was so easy just to say no to everything, no to every change request, go through all these ceremonies, and I'm like, oh, look at the time, it's the holidays. All prod deployments are locked. I'll see you in 45 days. I'm going to Tenerife. Now it's, you say no, but being the department and no, you have to be the department of essentially guardrails, except you're guarding somebody driving in a Ferrari SF90. They're going 120, and you're keeping up behind them in a unicycle, throwing guardrails out to them. So that's a lot what cloud security is. It's just, being able to react to contact and being very, very flexible, but allowing people to go, right? Stopping innovation is kind of like the death sentence for a company. So, look to being an enabler, not a disabler.
Thank you so much for your time today, Jonathan. I feel like I learned so much. That does it for this week's episode of Speed Data. Take care, Jonathan.
All right. Thank you, Megan. Bye.